Auschwitz was a network of concentration and extermination camps built and operated by the Nazi regime in Poland during World War II. The vast majority of those killed at Auschwitz were murdered in the gas chambers, which were disguised as showers. Auschwitz has become a symbol of the Holocaust and the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime. Auschwitz was located in Poland, near the town of Auschwitz. It was actually a complex of 3 camps: Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, also known as Birkenau, and Auschwitz III, also known as Monowitz. Auschwitz I was the main camp, where prisoners were held in barracks and used for forced labor. Auschwitz II, also known as Birkenau, was the largest camp and the site of the gas chambers. It was here that the majority of the murders at Auschwitz took place. Auschwitz III, also known as Monowitz, was a labor camp where prisoners worked in a factory owned by the German chemical company IG Farben. Auschwitz was first established in 1940 as a detention center for Polish political prisoners. In 1941, it was converted into an extermination camp. The prisoners at Auschwitz included Jews, Romani people, homosexuals, disabled individuals, and others deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. Many of the prisoners were transported to Auschwitz in crowded trains and were subjected to brutal treatment, including beatings and torture, upon arrival. Most prisoners at Auschwitz did not survive long due to the harsh living conditions and the lack of proper medical care. The horrors of Auschwitz have made it a symbol of the Holocaust and the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime. It is now a museum and memorial site, and it has been designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. The museum includes exhibits on the history of the camp and the experiences of the prisoners, as well as a section dedicated to the Romani victims of the Holocaust. The prisoners at Auschwitz were subjected to brutal treatment by the Nazi guards and officers. Many prisoners were subjected to medical experiments and other forms of torture. The prisoners were told that they were going to be given showers, and they were then led into the gas chambers and locked inside. The gas used in the chambers was called Zyklon B, and it was released through vents in the roof. The victims would die within a few minutes of being exposed to the gas. After the war, the Soviet Union, the United States, and the United Kingdom jointly tried the top surviving Nazi officials for war crimes at the Nuremberg trials. Some of the officials who were tried were responsible for the operation of concentration camps, including Auschwitz. Many other officials and camp guards were also tried and convicted for their roles in the Holocaust. Today, Auschwitz is a museum and memorial site, and it has been designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. It is visited by millions of people each year, and it serves as a reminder of the atrocities committed during the Holocaust. When prisoners arrived at Auschwitz, they were subjected to a selection process. The prisoners were divided into 2 groups: those who were deemed fit for work and those who were not. Those who were deemed fit for work were sent to the main camp, Auschwitz I, where they were held in barracks and used for forced labor. Those who were not deemed fit for work were sent directly to the gas chambers, where they were murdered. Upon arriving at the camp, the prisoners were forced to give up their belongings, including their clothing. They were then given striped prison uniforms to wear. The prisoners were also tattooed with a number on their arm, which was used to identify them. After the selection process, the prisoners were subjected to a variety of brutal treatments. They were forced to work long hours in harsh conditions, and they were given inadequate food and medical care. Many prisoners were subjected to medical experiments and other forms of torture. The living conditions at the camp were also extremely harsh, with overcrowding and unsanitary conditions being common. The prisoners were constantly subjected to abuse and mistreatment by the guards and officers at the camp. The gas used in the gas chambers at Auschwitz was called Zyklon B. It was a cyanide-based pesticide that was used to kill lice and other insects. The gas was released through vents in the roof of the gas chamber, and the prisoners inside would die within a few minutes of being exposed to it. The gas chambers at Auschwitz were disguised as showers, and the prisoners were told that they were going to be given showers when they were led into the gas chambers. They were then locked inside and the gas was released. The prisoners would die from asphyxiation as the gas killed their cells, which prevented their blood from carrying oxygen. It is estimated that around 1.1 million people were killed at Auschwitz, the majority of whom were murdered in the gas chambers. The victims included Jews, Romani people, homosexuals, disabled individuals, and others deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. The use of the gas chambers at Auschwitz was a key part of the Nazis' plan to exterminate these groups of people, which became known as the Holocaust. At Auschwitz, the bodies of those killed in the gas chambers were disposed of in a variety of ways. Initially, the bodies were buried in mass graves near the gas chambers. However, as the number of victims increased, it became impractical to continue burying the bodies. In 1942, the camp authorities began using crematoria to dispose of the bodies. The crematoria at Auschwitz were large ovens that were used to burn the bodies. The ashes from the cremated bodies were then disposed of in the nearby river or in nearby fields. In addition to cremating the bodies, the camp authorities also engaged in other methods of disposing of the bodies, including burning them in open pits and burying them in mass graves. The disposal of the bodies at Auschwitz was done in an effort to cover up the evidence of the mass murders that were taking place at the camp. The disposal of the bodies at Auschwitz was carried out by prisoners who were forced to work in the crematoria and in the burial and burning pits. The work was extremely difficult and dangerous, and many prisoners who were forced to do it did not survive long. Women at Auschwitz were subjected to the same brutal treatment as men at the camp. Those who were deemed fit for work were sent to the main camp, Auschwitz I, where they were held in barracks and used for forced labor. Those who were not deemed fit for work were sent directly to the gas chambers, where they were murdered. Women at Auschwitz were forced to work long hours in harsh conditions, and they were given inadequate food and medical care. Many women were also subjected to medical experiments and other forms of torture. The living conditions at the camp were also extremely harsh, with overcrowding and unsanitary conditions being common. The women at the camp were constantly subjected to abuse and mistreatment by the guards and officers. In addition to the physical abuse, women at Auschwitz also faced psychological abuse. Many women were separated from their families upon arriving at the camp, and they had to cope with the trauma of being in a place where they were constantly subjected to abuse and had no control over their own lives. The women at Auschwitz were also forced to witness the horrors of the camp, including the murders of their fellow prisoners in the gas chambers. It is estimated that around 140,000 women were imprisoned at Auschwitz, and around 15,000 of them died there. The majority of the women who died at the camp were murdered in the gas chambers. The Nazi officer Rudolf Höss was in charge of Auschwitz during the majority of its operation. Höss was responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of the camp and for implementing the policies of the Nazi regime. He was a key figure in the planning and execution of the Holocaust, and he was responsible for the murder of millions of people at Auschwitz and other concentration camps. Höss was born in 1900 in Austria, and he joined the Nazi Party in 1922. He joined the SS in 1934 and was later assigned to oversee the construction and operation of Auschwitz. Höss served as the commandant of the camp from May 1940 until December 1943, and he was responsible for the murder of at least 1.1 million people at the camp. After the war, Höss was captured and put on trial for war crimes. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. He was hanged at Auschwitz on April 16, 1947. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.